My name is Tamara de Lempicka, and my life was never meant to be ordinary. Why did I fall for one man as a girl, then marry another as a woman who had already been broken and remade by life? Why did my first marriage collapse under the weight of war, exile, and desire? And why did I later give myself to a second man who was so different? A man who offered safety, status, and a future, but never erased the memory of what I had lost. People remember me for my paintings, for the elegance, for the Bugatti, for the glamour. But nobody asks about the two men who shaped me. Nobody asks what it cost me to love them. Nobody asks what I gave up to become the woman I became. I will tell you, all of it, because my marriages were never just about love. They were about longing, survival, desire, freedom, and the price I paid for wanting all of it at once. I was born Tamara Rosa Górwik-Górska in Warsaw on a spring day that I later learned to change as easily as I changed my name. My father was a lawyer with Russian blood and a sharp mind. My mother, Malwina, was Polish, elegant, and restless. Their marriage was a palace built on sand, and I learned early to trust only what I could see and touch: silk against my skin, the glint of a chandelier, the careful arrangement of flowers at a dinner table. Childhood was a series of rooms, each more beautiful than the last, each one promising that beauty could protect me from disappointment. I moved through cities the way other girls moved through seasons: Warsaw, St. Petersburg, Lausanne. My parents' divorce sent me from one grand home to another, from my mother's careful hands to my Aunt Stefa's world in St. Petersburg, where bankers and aristocrats whispered secrets over crystal glasses. In Lausanne, I learned the rules of girls' boarding school: how to sit, how to speak, how to keep my hunger for more hidden beneath a polite smile. I hated it. I wanted the world, not a convent garden. My grandmother understood. She took me to Florence, to the Italian Riviera, to see paintings older than any story my family told. In those galleries, I saw how a woman could be immortal if she was beautiful enough, or painted by someone who loved her. Even as a child, I was always reaching. I watched the women at balls and in drawing rooms, their diamonds catching the light, their laughter sharp as knives. I studied their clothes, their gestures, the way they commanded a room. I learned that style was a kind of power, and that power was the only real protection. I decided early that I would never be satisfied with an ordinary life or an ordinary love. I wanted to be seen, to be remembered, to be more than someone's daughter, someone's wife. I wanted to live in the margins, where the rules were different, where I could invent myself again and again. I live life in the margins of society, and the rules of normal society do not apply to those who live on the fringe. That was not a lesson I learned from any man. It was a promise I made to myself. Long before love, long before exile, long before anyone tried to save me. I was not waiting to be rescued. I was already running toward the life I wanted, even if it meant breaking every rule I had been taught. When I first saw Tadeusz Łempicki at the opera in St. Petersburg, I was 15 and hungry for a life that sparkled, a life that would never belong to the ordinary women who stayed quietly in the corners of grand rooms. He was not the handsomest man in the city, but he carried himself as if the world owed him a favor. I decided on the spot that I would have him, and I did. My uncle arranged the introduction, but it was my own will that drew him to me. I wanted the life he represented: Polish, aristocratic, a little dangerous, and utterly self-assured. I wanted to step into his world and make it my own. Our wedding took place in 1916, under the gilded vaults of the Knights of Malta Chapel. My mother's dowry was generous. The flowers were white and trembling. The guests whispered that I was lucky. But I never believed in luck. I believed in choosing, and I chose Tadeusz with every nerve in my body. The marriage gave me a new name, a place in society, and a direction I could claim for myself. I wore the white dress as armor, determined that no one would see how young I was, how much I wanted to be adored, how much I feared being ordinary. Kizette arrived almost at once, a daughter with my eyes and his stubborn mouth. The fantasy became flesh. I remember holding her for the first time and feeling the world contract and expand in a single breath. Motherhood was not a gentle transformation. It was a door slamming shut behind me. I could not go back to the girl who only dreamed of love and beauty. I was now a wife, a mother, and a woman who had chosen her path with both hands. The nursery became my new ballroom, and every lullaby was a promise that I would not let the world shrink around me. That first version of myself, Tamara de Lempicka, wife, mother, ambitious and restless, was real and alive. I played the part with all the elegance I could muster, but beneath the pearls and the perfect smile, the hunger remained. Even as I built a family, I was building a self. I wanted to be adored, yes, but I also wanted to be free. I lived life in the margins of society, and the rules of normal society don't apply to those who live on the fringe. Loving Tadeusz was my first great act of invention, and for a time, I believed it would be enough. Revolution does not knock politely. It crashes through doors in the middle of the night and drags away the man you love with no explanation but the echo of boots on marble. December 1917, Petrograd was frozen. The city was in darkness, my nerves raw and trembling. I woke to the sound of fists on the door, and before I could smooth my hair or gather my wits, Tadeusz Łempicki was gone. The Cheka did not care for dowries or wedding rings or the fragile peace of a nursery. They cared for power, and they took him because he was mine, because he was Polish, because he was everything the new order wanted to erase. I did not wait. I would not be the kind of woman who sits behind curtains and weeps. I put on my best coat, the one with the fur collar, and I began to search. Prisons, offices, back alleys slick with ice. Everywhere I went, I carried the only currency I had left. My name, my beauty, my willingness to do whatever was necessary. I learned how to bribe a guard with a smile, how to beg for news in a language that tasted of iron and fear. I learned that love is not a gentle thing when the world is ending. I remember the Swedish consul's office, the sharp smell of ink and foreign cologne, the way he looked at me as if I were both a problem and a prize. I asked for his help, and I offered what I had to offer. I do not regret it. When a woman's world collapses, she becomes her own rescue. The papers I signed, the favors I promised, those are the debts that never appear in memoirs, but they are paid all the same. The consul's letter was our ticket out, stamped and sealed with the trembling hand of a woman who refused to be left behind. We left Petrograd with nothing but a suitcase, a child wrapped in blankets, and a handful of jewels sewn into the lining of my dress. Stockholm was a blur of snow and unfamiliar voices. The air thick with the scent of other refugees, each of us clutching the pieces of a life that no longer existed. In London, I learned to count every coin, to trade pearls for bread, to watch my husband's face for signs of hope or despair. Paris was a promise. A rumor passed from one exile to another. There, you could begin again. There, you could be someone new. Our old life vanished before we could mourn it. The grand homes, the dinners, the security of knowing your place in the world. All gone, replaced by train tickets, strange beds, the constant ache of not belonging. I became resourceful, sharper, harder. I learned that endurance is a skill, not a virtue, and that love must sometimes be fierce to survive. I did not know then what I would become, only that I would not be destroyed. I live life in the margins of society, and the rules of normal society don't apply to those who live on the fringe. Revolution forced me to choose, to fight, to run, to invent myself again. I chose all three. Paris was not the city of light for those who arrived with empty pockets and a child on their hip. I crossed the threshold of our first rented room with a suitcase, a daughter, and a husband who stared at the ceiling as if it might collapse. The jewels I had sewn into my hem were gone by spring. The last fur coat vanished at the pawnbroker's. I watched Tadeusz shrink into a man who could not find his reflection in this new world. The dinners grew thin, the laughter in the room brittle. There was no rescue waiting, no family fortune to reclaim. I had been a wife, a mother, an ornament in grand salons. Now I became something else entirely. Necessity is a sharper teacher than any governess. I picked up a paintbrush not to amuse myself, but to feed my child and save my name from dissolving in a city that did not care who I had once been. I was not born an artist. I became one out of hunger, out of pride, out of the furious refusal to disappear. The first portrait I sold was for a handful of francs, a commission from a Russian émigré who missed the world we had both lost. My hands shook as I painted her pearls, but I did not let her see. Each stroke was a bargain with fate. Let me survive, and I will make something beautiful from the wreckage. In Montparnasse, I rented a studio that smelled of turpentine and hope. I learned to paint quickly, to flatter, to give my clients the faces they wanted to show the world. Men and women came to me for their likenesses, but I gave them more, a trace of the grandeur we all pretended to remember. The city was full of exiles, each of us inventing a new story, a new self. I was no longer Tamara the wife, the daughter, the kept woman. I was Tamara de Lempicka, painter. I earned my place with every portrait, every sleepless night, every coin counted in the dark. Survival is not elegant, it is raw, and it remakes you. I became hard where I had once been soft, sharp where I had once been charming. I learned to love the solitude of my studio more than the false comfort of a man's embrace. The hunger that had once been for beauty and adoration became the hunger to endure, to create, to matter. In those years, I understood what it meant to live life in the margins of society, and the rules of normal society do not apply to those who live on the fringe. I was no longer waiting for rescue. I was building a life with my own hands, brushstroke by brushstroke, deciding what kind of woman I would become when survival was the only luxury left to me. Paris gave me a studio with a window onto the street and the smell of turpentine in the air. I arrived hungry to be seen, a child on my hip, ambition burning through the fatigue. The city didn't care about my past or my heartbreak. It offered only the chance to become someone new. I painted because I needed to, because fading into the background felt like death. Each canvas was a way to insist on my own existence, to claim a space beyond the roles I had been handed. Tadeusz and I shared a small apartment, but the closeness of our rooms only made the distance between us more obvious. The man who once promised safety now seemed uncertain, shrinking as I grew bolder. He watched as my name began to appear in newspapers and on invitations, as I slipped out to cafes and salons, laughing with strangers, my hand lingering on the back of a chair that wasn't his. I learned to flirt with freedom, to let desire drift outward, toward the world, toward possibility, toward the faces I painted in oil and light. I was no longer just a wife or mother. I was Tamara de Lempicka, a name whispered in Montparnasse, a figure in velvet and pearls, thrilling at the way attention found me. The more visible I became, the more invisible my marriage felt. The roles we had chosen in Russia didn't fit us here. He wanted the woman he had rescued. I wanted to be the woman who rescued herself. There were nights when I returned from a gallery opening or a lover's arms and found Tadeusz waiting, his eyes full of questions he no longer asked. Our conversations grew careful, polite, as if we might shatter what little peace remained. The distance between us crept in slowly, winding around old memories, choking the laughter we once shared. I missed him, even as I pushed him away. I missed the girl who believed love could be enough, but I could not make myself smaller to fit his longing. Kizette was the thread that held us together, stretched thin by the demands of my new life. I loved her fiercely, but I loved my work too. The applause, the thrill of being wanted, the sense that I was finally becoming the woman I had imagined. Each portrait was a step away from the past, a declaration that I would not be defined by loss or by the needs of a man who could not follow me into the future. What once felt like rescue began to feel like a cage. I wanted to be adored, but I wanted freedom more. Paris gave me room to breathe, to invent myself. Ambition became my companion, and with every success, the marriage faded, a beautiful haunted room I could visit only in dreams. In 1928, I began a portrait of Tadeusz. His face emerged first, familiar and distant, each brushstroke recalling 1,000 shared mornings and the ache of their absence. The suit was dark, the posture careful, but his left hand stayed unfinished, a pale outline, the place where his wedding ring should have caught the light, left empty. I stared at that blankness, brush hovering, unable to invent a symbol for a promise already broken. To others, it was just an incomplete painting. For me, it was the shape of something lost. I could paint his eyes, his mouth, the line of his jaw, each detail a memory, each color a negotiation between tenderness and regret. But the hand, the ring, the sign of belonging, I could not give him. I told friends it was a matter of composition. The truth was simpler. I could not paint a ring for a love that no longer existed. The divorce was signed in Paris. The papers, stamped and filed, joined passports and deeds in a drawer. Documents that once meant safety, now marking the end of a life we tried to build. The law called it dissolution, but it felt more like being split in two. I watched the ink dry and felt the world tilt. Paris moved on, indifferent to heartbreak. My name remained, but the woman who first wore it, the wife, the mother, the girl who believed in rescue, was gone. I did not seek scandal or spectacle. I worked. I painted. I showed up in salons and galleries, carrying a private grief that colored every canvas. Some days I could not rise from bed. The world felt drained of light, and applause from last night's opening sounded like noise from another room. My friends called it melancholy, but it was mourning, a grief for the version of my life that once felt chosen and whole, for a marriage that had been a shelter and became a shadow. Success arrived, and with it, a new kind of loneliness. I was celebrated, invited everywhere, my work admired, my style envied, but none of it filled the space left by the unfinished hand, the missing ring, the silence at my table where Tadeusz once sat. I had gained the world I wanted, the world I fought for, painted for, lied for, and lost the only person who knew the girl I was before I became Tamara de Lempicka. To choose yourself is to become your own country, your own witness, your own judge. The portrait of Tadeusz, unfinished and unapologetic, is all that remains of a love that could not survive the woman I became. I did not finish his hand because I could not finish that story. Some losses are too honest to be painted over. After the ink dried on the divorce papers, the world felt quieter, as if someone had drawn a heavy curtain between me and the person I used to be. What once seemed urgent, the fever of longing, the thrill of being wanted, became brittle, almost childish in the morning light. I had chased passion to the edge of ruin and found that it was not enough to keep me whole, not when the night stretched long and empty, not when applause faded and no one waited at home. The kind of love that once set my heart racing had proven too fragile, too quick to vanish when tested by hunger, exile, and the slow erosion of hope. I learned that survival carves new shapes into desire. I stopped looking for someone to sweep me into a new life because I had already built one from the ground up, brick by stubborn brick. I no longer wanted to disappear into another person's arms, to lose myself in the drama of rescue and surrender. Instead, I found myself craving something steadier, dignity, safety, a kind of shelter that did not demand I make myself smaller or softer to fit inside it. I had become too sharp, too visible, too much myself to ever be content with the old fairy tales. There is an ache that comes from outliving the person you once were, from realizing that the version of love you believed in is gone for good. I grieved for the girl who thought passion was enough, but I could not bring her back. I wanted a love that would not break under the weight of reality, a love that could stand beside me, not above or behind. This is what loss taught me, that to choose yourself is to accept loneliness and to make room for a different kind of companion. I live life in the margins of society, and the rules of normal society do not apply to those who live on the fringe. Only then did I become ready for a man who could see me as I was, not as I had been. Baron Raoul Kuffner entered my life not through romance, but through a commission. His mistress, Marjorie Ferry, wanted her portrait painted, and so he arrived in my studio, older and watchful. He was a patron first, precise in his questions, composed in his manner, carrying the weight of a vanished empire in his bearing. He watched me work, not with the restless energy of a suitor, but with the calm of someone who knows the value of endurance. There was no pretense of rescue, no hunger for spectacle. He understood that beauty could be both a shield and a bargaining chip, and he treated art as something to be protected, not merely admired. He was nothing like the boy I once chased through the marble corridors of St. Petersburg. Raoul did not offer wild adventure or declarations of love. He brought order, money, and access, the things I had come to prize after exile and heartbreak, after applause faded and the world grew cold. He was not the answer to a young woman's longing, but to a grown woman's need for shelter and dignity. His presence changed the atmosphere around me. Where Tadeusz had been a fever, Raoul was a steady fire, burning quietly in the hearth, warming the bones after a storm. He saw me as I was, no longer a wife desperate for affection, no longer a girl reinventing herself with each new dress or lover. He recognized the ambition and the fatigue that came from surviving too much. He did not shrink from my independence or ask me to be softer or less difficult. He admired my work and spoke of paintings as investments, treating my career as something to be guarded, not merely endured. In his world, I was not an ornament, but a partner in the business of survival. There was a kind of romance in his pragmatism. He did not chase me. He made space for me. He did not demand confessions or promises. Instead, he gave me the freedom to be silent, to be busy, to be alone with my canvases and my thoughts. The wound left by Tadeusz, the ache of unfinished love, began to close, not with a burst of passion, but with the slow comfort of being understood. With Raoul, I did not have to choose between love and ambition. He offered protection, not possession. He gave me a title, yes, but also a rare sense of safety. The world outside remained dangerous for women who lived boldly, but within his circle, I could rest. He completed something left open by my first marriage, a need for order after chaos, for shelter after exile. He did not erase the wound, but he did not deepen it. He let me be myself, even when that self was restless or tired of longing. In the end, he was not the boy I once chased, but the man who knew how to build a home from ruins. Marriage to Raoul Kuffner in the early 1930s was neither a rescue nor a surrender to longing. It was a decision shaped by loss and survival, made by a woman who had already rebuilt herself from the ruins of exile and heartbreak. The ceremony in Vienna was quiet, the vows exchanged beneath high ceilings, the signatures precise. I wore the title Baroness, not as a disguise, but as a shield, a deliberate choice that offered protection without demanding my silence. The world called me the Baroness with a brush, but the truth was simpler. I had chosen a life where I could remain visible, ambitious, and unyielding. With Raoul, I found a rare kind of partnership. He gave me status, a name that opened doors and a seat at tables where women were often expected to be ornamental. But he never asked me to set aside my art or soften my ambition. I painted in the mornings, hosted in the evenings, and traveled for commissions when I wished. He watched me work and respected the sharpness that survival had left behind. In a world that barely tolerated women who wanted more than comfort, he let me be his equal. This marriage was not a repetition of youthful hunger. I no longer chased after the ache of being seen or saved. I had outgrown that girl. What I wanted was dignity, safety, and space to paint. Raoul offered these without condition. I loved him for his steadiness, for the way he made room for my work, and for never forcing me to choose between love and art. If the world saw only the glamour, the title, the brush in my hand, let them. I knew the truth. I had chosen this life, this man, and this version of myself. In the quiet of our home, with canvases drying nearby, I found a peace that passion alone could never give. Europe offered no shelter, only warnings. Friends vanished, names slipped from memory, and laughter at dinner parties turned brittle. The city that once revived me now felt like a stage set for disaster. I recognized the signs. Walls closing in, fortunes dissolving overnight. Raoul clung to the old world, believing in the permanence of estates and titles. But I had learned that history could sweep away everything in a moment. I urged him to act. The Kuffner estates, the manors, the breweries, and the forests stood as monuments to a world already lost. Each property felt less like security and more like a target. I pressed him to liquidate, to turn memory into cash, to close accounts before someone else did it for us. Raoul hesitated, holding on to the belief that a baron's name still carried weight in Vienna or Budapest. But I refused to let nostalgia dictate our fate. I demanded we move, and at last, he agreed. In 1939, as war loomed, we left Europe behind. We carried new passports and the residue of old secrets. The Atlantic crossing was not an escape to comfort, but a leap into uncertainty. New York greeted us with its noise and hunger, a city that owed us nothing. I rented a studio on West 86th Street, hung my paintings in unfamiliar light, and tried to believe that Exile could be remade as freedom. The past did not release its grip. Hollywood beckoned, then Texas, each move a response to shifting threats, each city a test of how far I could reinvent myself. I traveled with little: a suitcase, a brush, a photograph of Kizette. I chose movement over memory, agency over attachment. Raoul let me lead, trusting my fear when his own failed him. I never looked back. I became the one who leaves, not the one left behind. I live life in the margins of society, and the rules of normal society don't apply to those who live on the fringe. I loved two men as only a woman remade by exile and ambition can love, fiercely, imperfectly, always at a cost. Even now, the world pretends that a woman must choose between desire and survival. But I chose my own story, and that freedom, lonely and luminous, still matters most. Tell me, would you dare the same?